Доброго дня, друзі. Починаємо наш брифінг.
Good afternoon, friends. We begin our briefing on exposing fakes and propaganda of the aggressor state. In recent days, the media has been spreading false information from Russian state propaganda resources about the alleged dispatching of international militants and international soldiers to Ukraine to commit various provocations. In particular, this was reported by the Russian editor, the state edition RIA Novosti. It says Great Britain has dropped sabotage specialists near Lviv, 20 people from the British Special Air Service who will help organize sabotage in Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine. By the way, an interesting question. What does the Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine mean? This is what is called the occupied territories, right? So, according to this unnamed RIA Novosti employee, with whom the agency spoke, allegedly this is an employee of the Russian security forces, who in turn received information from the Ukrainian armed forces. That is, you see how complex is the chain of getting this information into the media space, where it is circulated to an audience of millions. So, allegedly, these are specialists on organizing coups, mass protests, rallies, contract killings of politicians, recruiting agents, as well as preparing terrorist attacks. Well, what can I say about all this? Of course, the imagination of those who create such false information is very sick, although we must pay tribute to how they specifically create the longest possible chain of this message, so that later, when this lie is exposed, to say, yes, it's not us, someone else told this to a third person, and that third person told it to the tenth person. This is all untrue, just as the Russian Defense Ministry latest statement is untrue. It states that America is allegedly preparing provocations to accuse Russia of using chemical, biological or nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory, and allegedly, according to RIA Novosti, with reference to the Ministry of Defense. This plan has already been developed by the United States and is a reaction to Russia's success in conducting a special military operation. If the loss of more than 21,000 troops from Russia, as reported by the Ukrainian General Staff, is considered a success, the Americans should not even be involved in such successes to carry out sabotage. Namely, these sabotagers, according to the fantasies of Russian propagandists, should take place soon. But not only that, the Russian Ministry of Defense also reports another lie. There is a high probability of provocations at chemical and biological enterprises in Kharkiv and Kyiv regions, provocations at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and rocket attacks on a radioactive waste storage facility in Kamensk. Thus, these statements by the Russian state media and the Ministry of Defense of Russia are another use of the reflection technique. This is what they accuse Russia of. They are already translating not even to Ukraine, but to Britain and America. It is clear why, because in the modern Russian propaganda matrix, Russia is at war not with the fraternal Ukrainian people, but with NATO, America and Britain. Like there are no Ukrainian soldiers, and the Russians are at war with the armies of the Anglo-Saxon states. This is yet another cliché they use against the unfortunate Russia, which of course did not attack anyone. This is not the first time they have used such propaganda tricks, although they cannot convince anyone except their own audience, which has been in the information vacuum of propaganda from state authorities in Russia for many years, even decades. Another way to use the technique of reflection is a statement of Russian propagandists that Ukraine has allegedly disrupted the evacuation of civilians from Mariupol. Rather, not just Ukraine, but Ukrainian nationalists. They thwarted the evacuation by opening mortar fire on the gathering place. This is a complete delusion, because Ukraine has been asking for a corridor to be opened in Mariupol for weeks to evacuate civilians from Mariupol to Ukrainian-controlled territory. Propagandists traditionally cite unnamed individuals or members of the so-called People's Militia of the Donetsk People's Republic as the source of this message. What really happened? At 11 o'clock in the morning, at least 200 Mariupol residents gathered near the port city shopping center, waiting to be evacuated to Zaporizhia. Instead of the buses promised by the Russian side, the Russian military arrived and ordered Mariupol citizens to disperse because there would be shelling right now. Under pressure, people were rudely dispersed and loading buses were not delivered. This was reported by the Mariupol City Hall. Then they were told that they were being evacuated, but not to Kiev-controlled territory, but to territory that is already occupied. In fact, they are trying to take Ukrainian citizens to Russia, because once they are in the occupied territories, they are subject to aggressor state. People were not given the right to leave the bus. When asked why this was the case, the answer was that the nationalists fired at the evacuation point. In other words, once again, they lied in order to prevent the residents of Mariupol from evacuating to the part of the city controlled by the Ukrainian authorities. Meanwhile, in other occupied cities, particularly in Dnipro-Rudne in the Zaporizhia region, they removed the trident from the local administration. Instead, they hung a Russian flag, also with an understandable purpose, in order to create the illusion of a further effective and successful offensive of the Russian armed forces, as they themselves say, denazify Ukrainian territory. At the same time, even destroying Ukrainian national symbols recognized by everyone in the world, including Russia itself. Another fake was discovered on the air of the Italian TV program Pizza Pulita. There was presented a bunker apparently at Azovstal. In fact, as attentive viewers found out, this is a bunker map based on the board game of 2015, which never entered the market and has nothing to do with Azovstal. To credit the Italian journalists, after publishing a fake picture, they apologized on social networks, saying that they were mistaken and this picture had nothing to do with the Azovstal steel plant. Another important passage, it concerns an active informational propaganda campaign which has been going on in recent days regarding the alleged embezzlement on the territory of Ukraine of either humanitarian or military assistance from our partners. I told you that this information and psychological operation has all the signs of origins from Russia, in particular even the use of surnames that have no relation to reality. However, now we have the position of Valery Zaluzhny, commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, who urged Ukrainian citizens not to fall for this fake and not to believe the liars. Once again, I urge everyone, especially bloggers with large audiences, to refrain from publicly commentating on combat operations, logistics, supplies and commanders' decisions. This fake was spread through social networks. Only the military leadership has all the information and uses it to repel aggression. The key to successful destruction of the enemy is the non-proliferation of this information, in particular about the logistics of supplying weapons and humanitarian aid. This concludes the briefing. Traditionally, I urge you to trust the Ukrainian legal registered media, the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian political leadership. See you.